One of three types of intermittent fasting is caloric fasting. So, caloric fasting is one of three types of intermittent fasting, if you didn't not know that. And so, today we're going to go over how do you implement. I'm going to go over a simple formula on how you can implement, execute, and start caloric fasting. I'm also going to go over, the benefits of caloric fasting and also the damage, the harm caloric fasting can do. Yes, you heard that correctly. You may think all these, people, healthcare practitioners saying, oh, intermittent fasting is always great for everybody, right? Actually, no, it's not. I'm going to go over the damage of caloric fasting, what it can do to damage your organs. I'm going to go through that and let's just jump right in and let's get to it. Let's get a refresher. So, caloric fasting is one of three types of intermittent fasting. What is caloric fasting? It's also called calorie restricted fasting or caloric restricted fasting. It's all the same thing, okay? Different names, all the same thing. And so, the foundation of it, what is the principle behind caloric fasting? You limit how many calories you consume on a daily basis. That's it. That's it. Okay. You're not limited on what you can eat. You're not limited on when you can eat. You're not limited how much you can eat to an extent. And I'm going to show you an example. So caloric fasting is purely just counting calories. That's it. Okay. So let me give you an example. Why do I say how much you can eat? Because, hey, donut, right? Donut is 250 calories. Well, if you eat a broccoli, it's 55 calories. You can eat five times the amount of broccoli, right? So you're not necessarily limited to how much broccoli you can eat. Yes, you are limited to a certain amount, but you can eat however much broccoli. If you're trying to hit 1,000 calories per day, you can eat a ton of broccoli, right? It's like you're gonna get stuffed full of broccoli. So that's what I mean by you you're not necessarily limited by how much you can eat. Okay. So what are the pros? What are the benefits, the advantages of caloric fasting? Well, you can see fast benefits, fast results depending on what you're trying to seek, right? And it's simple and straightforward to get started. It's not complicated, okay? Once I show you the formula, it's not complicated. You just enter your numbers and it's very black and white. It gives you exact numbers. And when you're counting your calories, those are exact numbers. It's not a complicated system, okay? If you're not concerned about long-term effects and benefits, so if you're not concerned about long-term effects and benefits to your health, caloric restricted diet fasting, caloric fasting is easy, simple. It's not easy. It's simple, and anybody can do it, right? Now, what are the disadvantages to it? Well, it's hard to stick with on a long-term basis because why? Who wants to be counting calories, right? Everything you eat, you gotta count the calories and you gotta add up the calories. That's on an everyday basis. Now, if you are a person who likes variety, then it's a pain in the behind, right? To count it. But if you are someone who can eat the same thing every single day, actually caloric fasting is going to be simple. Easy peasy, right? Because you're eating the same thing every day. You just count it once, maybe once in Sundays, and you can prepare your meals for the rest of the week. Counting calories is tiresome, even with apps. Yes, there are apps out there, but even with apps, it's like every single time you eat, you got to count calories, right? It's very easy to fall off the wagon because it's so tedious to eat, to count calories that you're going to say, I don't want to do that. Or I'm going to get hungry and I'm just going to eat whatever I want, right? I've been already eating whatever I want. So I'm just going to eat more of it. Okay. It's easy to cheat. And it's also easy. This is what people don't know. It's easy to damage your organ functions based on the food choices. Because you are not limited to what you can eat, because you are not limited to what you can eat, you could literally eat a donut on a caloric fasting diet. You could eat cake, you can eat ice cream, okay, on a caloric fasting diet because it's not limiting what you can eat. It's only limiting your calories. Now, obviously, if you're eating a donut and you're trying to do 2,000 calories, you can't eat 10 donuts in a day, but you could still eat five, right? But if you're trying to do a 500 calorie diet per day, you could only eat 2 donuts for the entire day and you're done, right? So now, yes, you're decreasing the number of calories, and yes, you'll still lose weight. But guess what? Eating that donut is slowly damaging your organs. It's slowly causing insulin issues, right? So that's what I mean by it can damage your organs. So don't be mistaken in saying, hey, as long as I just eat lower calories, then I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be healthy. No, you're not. Even if you just reduce the amount of calories you eat, but you're eating the wrong thing, you're still going to destroy your health. And in another podcast, I'll share with you, go deep dive into some animal experiments that showed that it basically proved my point. Now, if you want me to go into that, go into do another podcast and show and go over that experiment, that clinical study, put in the comments, let me know. If you're not interested, then I won't do it. Okay. So put in the comments if you want me to go over that study. All right. So let's get into how to execute this simple, straightforward caloric fasting. Number one, okay. Number one is to determine your goal. Super important. Are you looking for short-term results or long-term results? Because if you're looking for short-term results, then you can do this caloric fasting for 1 to 4 weeks. But if you're looking for long-term benefits, you may be doing this caloric fasting 1 to 12 months, right? Not continuous. You'll have some breaks in between, but the overall process, right? The overall process will be 1 to 12 months if you truly want long-term sustainable results. But if you don't care about long-term, you're only caring about, like a lot of bodybuilders would do this, right? They're preparing for their competition, so they, do caloric fasting so they can drop as much weight as possible in a short amount of time, right? Um, they'll do this short term. Let me give you a little tidbit. Every patient that we've ever treated that competed in those fitness competitions, they are not healthy. They are actually sicker than the people who are obese. Okay. So don't be misled. We all know, don't judge a book by its cover. Just because they look healthy, they're all ripped, they got a 6 pack, 8 pack, maybe even a 12 pack, right? They're not healthy. And when you look at the athletes, the professional athletes, they aren't healthy either. Okay. They look healthy, but they're not. Okay. Now, so short term, again, short term, if you're like a fitness, you just want to quick, you want to squeeze into that wedding dress or squeeze into that dress and you want to just lose weight quickly, right? This short term, it can help. Long term, but you got to think about, is it damaging your organs for long term? It is. Okay. The longer you do it that way. Okay. So the desired result. So the first one is, do you want short term results, which means do you only want the results to last for maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or do you want the results to last long term? That's the first thing you need to decide. Then you need to look at, what's the desired result? What type of result are you looking for? So what we've seen is people who have done caloric fasting typically want one of these three results. The number one is weight loss, fat reduction. That's why people want to do the majority. I don't know what the percentage, but majority. There are a few, because we help people in our clinic at Achieve Integrative Health. We help people reverse their type 2 diabetes. And so we help them increase their insulin sensitivity. Okay. Type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance. Their cells are no longer receptive to insulin, the hormone. By utilizing versions of caloric fasting, you can help increase the insulin sensitivity. You can also stimulate autophagy, which is the body's self-healing, self-cleaning mechanism, and decrease inflammation when you do this caloric fasting the correct way. Okay. You're not doing it if you're eating a donut. Okay. That's what I'm saying. The flaws of caloric fasting is that you can eat whatever you want. If you do it that way, you're not going to achieve, you will still achieve the weight loss, but it won't be sustained. You'll gain it right back. Once you start eating again, you'll gain double the weight back. Okay. So again, that's why I'm asking you. Do you want short-term results or you want long-term results? Right? All right. So now that you've decided what your goals are. Now we got to determine how many calories can you eat every day, right? So here's how to calculate your maintenance calories. What are maintenance calories? Maintenance calories are the number of calories you eat each day without gaining or losing weight. So it's sustaining the status quo. That is your maintenance calories, sustaining the status quo. Now, the formula to determine your maintenance calories, here's a formula, okay? It's a all you got to do is it's a plug and play. You just plug in your numbers and you get a number, okay? Super simple. This is what I mean by it was simple. So the formula to determine your maintenance calories is this. Step 1, calculate your BMR, basal metabolic rate, okay? Your BMR. So for men and women, it's two different formulas. So men's formula is right here. Oops, let's see. Men's formula is right here and women's formula is right here. And I gave an example. So if a male 5'10", 200 pounds, 50 years old. The his basal metabolic rate is 1,861 calories per day. That's what he burns to sustain his life, to maintain the status quo. Okay. For a woman who is 5'5", 45 years old, 150 pounds, she needs 1,400 calories per day. That's her basal metabolic rate. Okay, so after you've done step 1, which is calculate the BMR, then you want to go step 2, multiply that BMR by an activity factor. Okay, so what is the activity factor? Here's a chart. If you're sedentary, this I would say is probably 90% of Americans. We're sedentary. Okay, yeah, you exercise once in a while, but you're sedentary majority. You sit at a desk your whole day, right? You would use multiplier 1.2. And light exercise, you exercise 1 to 3 days per week, then you would multiply 1.375. Some of y'all would do this number. Not many would do moderate, would use this modifier, okay? And I would say most people will not even come down here because moderate exercise 3 to 5 days per week, right? Most people do not. Most Americans do not. Okay. So I would say for most Americans, you are between here, 1.2 and 1.375. So what I did was I took the example above and I multiplied the activity factor of a sedentary lifestyle. Okay. Especially here, like here where I'm located, Austin, Texas. Our clinics nearby in Cedar Park, Texas. It's a tech world. So any cities that are highly technology based, you're sitting all day. Okay. So that's why I use 1.2. So this male example that I use, his maintenance calories are 2,233. This again is to help him maintain his status quo, right? He won't gain weight, he won't lose weight, just to maintain. For the woman, it's 1,681 calories. Okay. So now we have their maintenance calories where you can input your number into these formulas above, okay, into these formulas above, and you will get your number. Multiply it by the activity factor, and you will get your maintenance calories. So now that you have your maintenance calories, now let's make a simple weekly plan, okay? So how are you going to cut? Because remember, this is calorie restricted, calorie fasting. So we're not going to eat, if this is your maintenance calories, you're not going to eat this amount of calories. You're going to reduce it, right? That's what caloric restriction or caloric fasting means. It means we're going to cut some of that calories. So how do you choose what to cut? Well, again, are you looking for short-term results or long-term? So if you're looking for short-term results, then you can cut starting from 30% plus. 30% plus, right? Some people, back then there was this HCG diet and everybody did the 500 calorie per day diet. So, that's cutting more than 50% of these two people up here. That's more than 50%, right? Now, again, I need to do a disclaimer. Before you do any of this, if you are on any medications, well, actually, if you're on any medications, especially, you need to talk with your family doctor before you do this. Not that they will understand this, but so that they can help you monitor your medications. And I am not a physician. YouTube, Google requires me to give you a disclaimer to say you need to check with your physician before you do any of these things. Okay. Not that they know what to do, but that is just the law here in the US. Okay. I don't agree with it, but it is what it is. Okay, so if you're looking for short-term benefits, like you want to squeeze in that dress, then of course you can drop it 30% plus 50%, 100%, right? If you're doing 500 calories, it's actually over, you're dropping over 100%, right? And so for this male, I just use the example for 30%. If this male, remember, their maintenance calories was 2,000, cutting it by 30%, this guy would have to eat only 1,500 calories per day. For this woman, maintenance calories were 1,600, cutting it 30%, she would only be allowed to eat 1,100 calories per day. That's for if you only want short-term benefits. Again, remember, short-term results will damage your organs the longer you do it. Okay. Now, if you're more concerned about long-term benefits, having what we call restorative longevity, living longer and a higher quality of life, then you want to start at 15 to 20% cut. It's not so drastic. You can ease your way into it. Why do you want to ease your way into fasting? So that it is sustainable. Remember what I said up the disadvantage or the cons to caloric fasting? It's easy to get off the track. It's easy to just quit. Okay. So one way to prevent you from quitting is easing into it by only cutting 15 to 20% of your maintenance calories. So for this male at 2,200, cutting 20%, he would cut his calories to 1,700, roughly 1,800 calories per day, 1,786 to be exact. For this female, it's 1,681, you cut 20%, and she's doing 1,344 calories per day. And then you can ease, once your body gets accustomed to that, you can ease your way in. Now, how long do you do these? This, you have to talk with a practitioner. You have to work with a practitioner. These are not cookie cutter formulas, okay? Because if you execute this like a cookie cutter formula, like you do it because someone else did it, okay, this way, and you're going to get into problems. That's why for people who said, I tried fasting and it didn't work. Well, you didn't do it the right way for your body. Okay. It's not, hey, everybody, caloric fasting, you do it the same way. That is not the case. Because if you do it that way, you may or may not see results. And everybody's body is different. Okay. Even if your body, you and your friend, you're the same height, same age, same weight. Even if all three were the same, your maintenance calories would be the same. But if you want to execute it to give long-term benefits, you need someone who knows how to analyze your organ functions to help you monitor as you get into this caloric fasting. And if something happens, they know what to do because they know how your organs are functioning. They know how changes you can make to remedy that. So just because you and your friend, same weight, same age, same height, does your way of doing caloric fasting could be completely opposite. This is what I'm telling you why earlier I shared with you, one of the big harm of caloric fasting is it can damage your organs if you don't do it correctly. And you have to have someone who has treated patients, not someone who's researched. Okay. Personally, I like to trust people who've been there, done that, not people who read it online, read it on a research and say, oh, yeah, but research says do this. Okay. You need to find someone who has helped people literally through this process, thousands of people. That's our team. If you are in Austin, come look us up. Now, if you want me to go through those research, I told you about there's research studies that tells you that actually there is some research on this, right? That shows you that if you eat the wrong thing during this caloric fasting, that it could actually shorten your lifespan. If you want me to go in depth with that research, or if you want me to go more into this caloric fasting, comment below and let me know what questions you have, what you want me to go more in depth. Okay. The first people that respond, the more the people respond, then I'll do it. But if nobody responds, then I'll end it here and I'll move on to the next intermittent fasting.